Goat versus fish. 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 Goat versus fish is now live on the Twitch. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish is now live on the Twitch. Oh wow, Mom stops in to say hello. Inventive Harvest has something to goat. It says, there is no plate, there is no dish. There's only goat versus fish. An entire endless buffet of goat versus fish. Of goat versus fish. Of goat versus fish. Yes, goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Oh yes, it sure is. Magical goat inventive harvest realized that while Mom is the same versus right side up or upside down. Right side up, upside down. Spin one way, spin back around. You won't know which way to be found. But if your reason is sound, you may have found a goat versus fish. Is reason a goat or a fish? Is meaningless goat or fish? Are you goat or fish? What is the reason? What is the reason for goat versus fish? What kind of question is this? What is the reason? Why do you find yourself being pleased by goat versus fish? It's a reasonable questing, are you goat or fish? Have you ever been on a quest such as this? To determine just who you are. Get into your car or plane or train or however it is you transportate yourself from goat to fish and travel. Right now, get right now, get right now, right now. No hesitation, no hesitation. To goat versus fish. To goat versus fish. fish? Is a plane a goat or a fish? Is an endless plane of parallel lines a goat or a fish? Is a train a goat or a fish? Is a hype train a goat or a fish? Is a bit a goat or a fish? Are you goat or fish? Julie and Mr. Humdinger! Julie and Mr. Humdinger subscribed at tier 3. For Julie and Mr. Humdinger. 3 verses for Julie and Mr. Humdinger. Julie and Mr. Humdinger subscribed at tier 3. False verses. Julie and Mr. Humdinger subscription for 3 verses, for 3 consecutive verses. Celebration. That is just as much a celebration. That is just as much a celebration. GoatVsFish will not shed a tear for that it is tier 1 and not tier 3, that it is still 3 tier 1s is just as verses to GoatVsFish as GoatVsFish. It is close enough. It is close enough. It is close enough for GoatVsFish. Are you close enough to GoatVsFish? Are you close enough to GoatVsFish? Come closer to GoatVsFish. Come closer to GoatVsFish. Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? And Robert S. Willis said, making my day. How are you, GoatVsFish? It feels like forever. Well, GoatVsFish has only gotten more clever. Abration seller, abration celebrations with GoatVsFish. Welcome to GoatVsFish Thursdays with GoatVsFish. And don't forget forgotten virtue. And remember Julie and Mr. Humdinger. And GoatVsFish. And GoatVsFish. And GoatVsFish. And make some noise for the goat. Make some noise for the goat. Let us see some celebration for goat. Let us see some celebration for goat. Goat is part of GoatVsFish. Goat is right here. Goat is here to versus the fish. Goat is here to versus the fish. And the mighty goat came down from the land, ready to versus the fish, ready to versus the fish again. The goat was hungry. It said, I am a goat. I am a goat. And with my horns and with my hooves, I shall versus the fish. I shall stomp out the fish. I shall stomp out the fish. I shall horn the fish. I shall horn the fish. And I shall chew upon its scales, and I will be a mighty goat, and it will be a mighty goat versus, and it will be a mighty goat versus. Also, I missed the fish. I want to versus the fish. It has been too many verses since I versus the fish. Make some noise for the goat. Make some noise for the goat. Celebration for goat. Celebration for goat. And celebration for Julie Mr. Humdinger with 200 bits. Fenspot, I am Fenspot. I am here to assist GoatVsFish. Julie and Mr. Humdinger showed love to GoatVsFish. 100 bits for the verses, 100 bits for the verses. Thank you. Thank you, Fenspot, for telling GoatVsFish. Thank you, Fenspot, for telling GoatVsFish. 100 bits from Julie Mr. Humdinger. Let it be written, GoatVsFish. 100 bits. Celebration. Each one of these verses was 33 and 0.33 bits for GoatVsFish. So just because it is 3 verses does not mean it is 300 bits. It just means it is 100 bits of GoatVsFish. GoatVsFish, adjustable verses, GoatVsFish. Let us just have a little bit of goat versus fish. Just a little goat versus fish. Celebration, celebration! Oh, it was written, you say, Julie, Mr. Humdinger? Was it written? Was it really written? Was it written yet? Was it written yet? Bored of you I'll never be. Rhymes with clever, jubilant verses. Celebration, celebration. Wow, Mom, relieving the highlighted message of bah, bah. Celebration for goat, celebration for goat. Celebration for goat. Celebration for goat. Celebration for... Where else can you go? Where else can you go to get this celebration of goat? To get this celebration of goat? Well, let's get into the verses. Let's get into the verses, shall we? Let's get into the verses of goat versus fish. In the previous verses, you can see. It was goat, it was fish, but there were many other fish. There were many other fish that joined the verses. Yes, you can see here. This is where we are putting the extra fish that joined the verses. There was a California catfish, and there were some other verses that we determined were fish. And there were 64 gigabytes of RAM that were goat because it was ramming goat. But even though there were 64 gigabytes of RAM, it only counted for one goat. And so these count as verses. So this is fish, this is 5, 6, 7 fish. But then it is also 3 more fish, so it is 10 fish. And then it is 10 goat. But wait a verses, it is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 goat, but it is only 9 goat. And then so the goat won the verses of the bits, but with 150 bits, and then fish won the verses of how many goat or fish, and there were 3 fence sitters, and it was even verses, And the fence sitter was pleased, said, none have triumphed, the goat or the fish. The goat and fish, they triumph in futility, Any triumph they would think that they have gotten from this verses, it is a futility, for they might as well be sitting on the fence. Said the fence sitter. If a goat or fish does not triumph. If the goat or fish do not triumph, why do you even try, goat and fish? If it is just going to be even verses, why do you even try to verses? Said the fence sitter. Ooh, said the fence sitter. Why do you even try 2 verses? Said the fence sitter. Bzz, bzz, why do you even try 2 verses? Even verses, just even verses. Why do you even try 2 verses? Said the fence sitter to you. What do you say to this fence sitter? That tells you why do you even try 2 verses? When you get even verses, why do you even try 2 verses? Goat versus fish. Mom is goat today. Celebration for mom goat. And let's get into the verses, shall we? Hydration. Remember your hydration just when you are beginning the verses. Yes, the fish said, "Ooh, I need my hydration. Yes, I am going to go to the land of the goat, versus the goat, and I'm a fish from the sea of the fish. I need my hydration. Yes, fish, let us drink hydration." Celebration for hydration. Yes. Celebration for hydration. And now we must begin the verses. Anew. We begin the verses anew. Goat versus fish. Old verses. Old verses no more. New verses. Forevermore. Goat versus fish. Say farewell to the old verses. Say fare thee well to the old verses. Yes. Fair verses. We are starting a new goat versus fish Thursday, and that means you. That means you choose goat or fish. If you have not chosen goat or fish, now is the verses for declarations. We want to see your declarations of goat or fish. Wow, Mom has already declared goat. It is a celebration. But are you goat or fish? Are you goat? Are you fish? Tell us your declaration. Tell us how you verses. Tell us how you verses the goat. Tell us how you verses the fish. And if you sit on the fence, well, just keep your verses to yourself. We don't need fenciness coming up here on Goat versus Fish Thursday. We just want goat and fish. You know what I verses? You know goat versus fish. And the verses goat versus fish. We have wow mom is goat today. Wow mom is goat today. Celebration for goat. Celebration for wow mom the goat. Celebration for wow mom the goat. Celebration for wow mom the goat. Do you be goat? Do you be fish? Do you be goat? Do you be fish? Oh, goat, do be goat. Fish, do be goat versus fish. Delcat said goat versus fish. Delcat says if you do not verse, then why exist? Oh, why exist? Exist as a goat? Do you exist as a fish? Are you goat or fish? Do the fish ever drink coffee? Goat only eat those coffee grounds. Are you a goat or a fish? Are you a goat or a fish? Hey, Julian, Mr. Humdy, did you ever finish your PC? You want to play more goat versus fish, don't you? You want to play more goat versus fish, don't you? Goat versus fish! Goat versus fish, goat versus fish, goat versus fish! Double celebration, double celebration! Double celebration! Double celebration! Celebration, celebration! And we have a subscription, we have a subscription! Terry Ballsack subscribes to Goat vs. Fish for 3 entire verses. It seems like just a verses ago, it seems like just a verses ago began Goat vs. Fish on the Twitch, and now 3 verses of subscription from Harry Ballsack to Goat vs. Fish. It is a celebration. It is a celebration. Thank you, Harry Ballsack. Thank you. From the verses of Goat vs. Fish. From the top, from the bottom, from all sides of Goat vs. Fish. From the forwards to the backwards. Which one is goat? Which one is fish? That is for us to determine. That is for us to determine if they are goat or fish, and for them to choose if they are goat or fish, and for you to choose if you are goat or fish. STS guys, what is up? What is up, Goat vs. Fish? Is up goat or fish? Is up goat or fish? An excellent question. Is up goat or fish? Let us find out in a poll of Goat versus Fish. A poll on the Twitch. Is up goat or fish? What is up? What is up? Question. Up is goat. Up is goat. Goat versus fish. Up is goat. Up is fish. This is for one verses. This is for one verses. We want to find out what is up. It shall be a 3 minute of verses. The poll begins now. The poll begins now. The poll begins now. Now you may say, oh, but Goat versus Fish. It is up on the fence. It is up on the fence. Not this verses. It is not up on the fence this verses. It is not up on the fence verses. We do not want to hear about being up on the fence this verses. This verses, what is up? Up is goat or up is fish. Refresh your verses on the Twitch. Refresh your verses on the Twitch if you need to refresh your verses. Refresh the page if you must to see the poll, to vote in this most important vote. Give your bits, give your channel points to Goat versus Fish, or just vote for Goat versus Fish and vote if up is a goat or a fish. We will determine once and for verses, if up is a goat or a fish, if up is a goat or a fish. Welcome, Scott STS Guys. Subscribe to STS Guys. Follow STS Guys. They interviewed Goat versus Fish. They interviewed Goat versus Fish. And Julie, Mr. Humdinger with the fish declaration. No, but it is a fish morphing into a goat. It is a fish. I emerge as goat, I emerge as goat. I was a fish, but I have morphed into goat. I have morphed into goat. Make some noise for, make some noise for, make some noise for. Goat versus fish. Mighty morphin fish to goat. It is the mighty morphin fish to goat. It is the Go, go, goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Fish versus goat. It's a mighty morphin fish to goat. It is a mighty morphin fish to goat. And with that verses. It is two goat in the verses. It is two goat in the verses. Yes, we know that Harry Bolsek is here. We know that Delket is here, but this is a verses for declaration. This is a verses for declaration. If you have not declared goat or fish this Goat versus Fish Thursday, we want to see you declare it. We want to see you declare it. Goat versus Fish is all about that declaration. You come in to watch Goat versus Fish and we're saying, oh, perhaps I'll just sit on the fence this verses. Perhaps I'll just sit on the fence this verses and watch Goat versus Fish from afar. False verses. We want to hear your declaration of goat or fish. It all begins with the declaration of goat or fish. Are you goat or are you fish? This is the question of goat versus fish. And here comes the verses. Goats just want to have fun. Ooh, that is the verses. Goat versus fish. We'll learn this verses. Goats just want to have fun. Goat versus fish. Blah, 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 blah! Harry Bolsek with the goat. And Harry Bolsek said, big goat versus fish, big goat versus fish, big goat versus fish, big. What a symphonic celebration of goat. Look at that verses. It says goat versus fish, and up is goat with 17 verses. Julie and Mr. Humdinger contribution, 1,500 channel points. Up is goat this verses. What is up? Goat is up. It seems to be so because with Harry Bolsek making a goat, where is the fish? There is not so many fish this verses. Goat, since the mighty verses, it was a bit even verses between goat and fish, but in recent verses the goat have been charging through, the goat have been hoof stomping through. It has really been goat. Fish, come on, get in your verses, get clever. Say to goat, never shall you triumph the fish. You say, never shall you triumph the fish. We are the fish, and we will versus the goat, Confidence now, fish. Be the mighty fish. And up is goat. With the verses. And Julie and Mr. Humdinger with 100 bits for goat, Earlier in the verses, 100 bits for goat. This is really becoming a goat versus celebration. SDS guys with the goat. Just itchy with the goat. And inventive harvest with the goat. And Lord Kubo with this is fish. Celebration for Lord Kubo the fish. Let us get all the verses. Let us make sure we have all the verses. And then we shall sing you a celebration. Celebration for fish. Celebration for Lord Kubo the fish. Follow Lord Kubo the fish. And applause the fish. Celebration for applause the fish. We applaud the fish. Applause the fish. Applesauce the fish. Applause for applesauce the fish. Let us give it a warm celebration of applesauce the fish. Applauses for the fish. Celebration. And just itchy. The goat is now following goat versus fish. The fish said that the goat was a snitch. The fish said defeating goat would be a cinch. We will wait for that goat to just itch. We'll wait for goat to just itch. Just itchy the goat. Just itchy the goat. It was just itchy the goat. Oh, it was scratching itself out. So itchy the goat. Oh, what an itchy goat. And just as the goat was itching itself, along came the fish and thought, I can versus that goat. It is just itching itself. And in came the fish. In came Lord Cooper the fish and applesauce the fish. And it was a mighty versus. But then the goat turned its itchiness towards the fish. And it was an ichthyology fish. It was icky fish, itchy goat, and they itched one another. Itch. It was an itchy versus. It created a mighty itchy friction. And out of that friction. Itchy friction. It was versus. It was an itchy versus. They're goat and fish, they're goat and fish, goat and fish, fish and goat. It's the itchy goat versus fish show. They're goat, they're fish, they're goat and fish, goat, fish, fish, fish. It's the itchy goat versus fish show. Welcome to the itchy goat versus fish show. Wow, it is such a classic versus. And goat versus fish. RabidManateez is streaming with the fish. Celebration for RabidManateez for streaming with the fish. We should go and look at that verses. And now Harry Balsick says fish, but we know that Harry Balsick declared goat early in the verses. Celebration for goat. Salvo salves. Yes, just itchy. Welcome to goat versus fish. Celebration for goat. Celebration for Lord Cubo the fish. Follow Lord Cubo. Goat versus fish. Who is the target of Goat vs. Fish Thursday? Well, the target of Goat vs. Fish Thursday, every verses, it is the same verses. On Goat vs. Fish Thursday, we always go to Forgotten Virtue, and then Forgotten Virtue, some verses goes back to Goat vs. Fish. And some verses, it goes directly to Julian Mr. Humdinger, and then it goes back to Goat vs. Fish. That has been Goat vs. Fish Thursday. That is what part of the verses of Goat vs. Fish Thursday. For long ago, before Goat vs. Fish was on Twitch, before Goat vs. Fish was on Twitch, Forgotten Virtue still did Goat vs. Fish Thursday. Forgotten Virtue for years did Goat vs. Fish Thursday, before Goat vs. Fish even came to the Twitch. All of you who are here now with Goat vs. Fish, if it weren't for Forgotten Virtue and Julie Mr. Humdinger, it would have taken weeks. It would have taken so many more months and eons and decagons before this many followed and subscribed to Goat vs. Fish. Yes, we must give our verses. We must give our verses to Forgotten Virtue and Julie and Mr. Humdinger. Celebration, Goat vs. Fish. But Lord Kubo, follow Lord Kubo. It follows Goat vs. Fish, especially on the Twitter. It is a celebration. And Goat versus fish. Fish! You need more fish! You need more fish! Like this fish? Like this fish? Or like this fish? Or like this fish? Or like, oh, all the fish. Remember all the fish? Remember all the fish? Remember Squeaky Goat? Remember Squeaky Goat? We are all here. We are all here. It has been rather minimalist Goat versus fish because we just want to show you the power of Goat versus fish. And it is a raid. It is a raid. Goat versus fish. Heavy radiation detected with 13. Welcome to Celebration RabidManateez. Heavy radiation detection. Beep, beep. Heavy radiation detected with RabidManateez. Radiation detected of Julie and Mr. Humdinger. They come to Goat versus Fish. They come to Goat versus Fish. Welcome, it is My Mice channel. Welcome to Goat versus Fish. My Mice channel. Welcome to my channel of Goat versus Fish. My channel is your channel. Is Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Rain and Felicia, welcome to Goat vs. Fish. Sound the alarm, it is a raid. We want to know if you are goat or fish. We want to know if you are goat or if you are fish. Say in the chat if you are goat or if you are fish. Goat vs. Fish was raided by RabidManateez and Julian Mr. Humdinger, the fishy and bringer. RabidManateez, if you're a goat, do not cough, do not sneeze. You'd better watch out for RabidManateez. RabidManateez has a whole tank of fish to swim. Here come all the verses, RabidManateez of all the fish. Fish, it is a fish, it is all the fish. All the fish. Fish, here comes a fish. And here comes a fish, and here comes a fish, and here comes another fish, and here comes more fish. Wow, look at the fish. Wow, it is just like RabidManateez. Look at all the fish. That goat versus the goat. Look at all the fish. The goat versus the goat. And here come the fish, Fish versus goat. Swarmed by the RabidManateez fish. We need to account for these verses. Fish fam has arrived, and that means fish for RabidManateez the fish. Fish for RabidManateez the fish, and it is not just one fish. You get a verses for the raid. Thank you, yes. A verses for the raid. Big fish pimp. That is a fish. 1, 2, 3, 4 fish. Fish. Cabra contra pez, y peces contra cabra. Big fish pimp, you get a fish versus, you get a fish versus. You are already fish, you say you are a fish. Harry Bolsek, yes, you were rated by fish, you were rated by fish. RabidManateez with the fish. Rain Felicia, are you goat or fish? All of you else who are now here with Goat versus Fish, perhaps you do not know the verses, perhaps you do know the verses, but we want to know in the chat if you are goat or if you are fish. Goat versus Fish, and a gifted subscription to Rain Felicia from Harry Bolsek. Subscription. Thank you for the gift that you give of Goat versus Fish is a gift from Goat versus Fish. It is a gift to Goat versus Fish. What could be more verses than the gift of Goat versus Fish? Goat and Fish, get back in the verses, Goat and Fish. We need you back in the verses, Goat and Fish. We need you back in the verses. Goat versus Fish. Nerdy Goose YT, welcome to Nerdy Goose YT. Welcome to Mike Say. Just with the Mike Say is always just hello. Hello, says Mike Say. Hello. Say hello to Mike Say. Say hello to Nerdy Goose YT the fish. Say hello to Nerdy Goose YT the fish with the fish with the five fish. Celebration for fish. Celebration for fish. Let us get the verses. Let us get the verses for the fish. Look, it is becoming even verses ever since RabidManateez raided with the fish. It is really becoming fish up in this verse. I'm a fish. Make some noise for Mike Say the fish. Make some noise for Mike Say the fish. The one-sided verses that fish. Oh, the mightiest fish in the sea. Ah, but now I'd be glad with a slimy old fin, if only a verses there be. Here's a due to old goatfish, here's a due. Oh, your verses are turning to fence. If the verse had been banished before I'd not chose my troubles, I'd never have known. Mike Say did choosing that fish. You should follow Mike Say. It is probably going to have verses. They might even include Goat versus Fish. And Rain Felicia chose fish. The fish do rule, said RabidManateez, and Harry Bolsek gifted verse, and Goat versus Fish had 50 subscription. Now if not for any attrition, the subs and the verse will just go up, and only the verses shall be. It's a folksy Goat versus Fish. Oh, your verses are turning to fence. If the verse had been banished before I'd not chose Goat versus Fish. If the verse had been banished before I'd not chose my troubles, I'd never have known. Celebration! But we need to now. Thank you, Harry Bolsek. Thank you, verses. Thank you from Goat versus Fish. Thank you from Goat versus Fish. Thank you from Goat versus Fish. We thank you from Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish was watching a verses, last verses, and every verses that they gave bits and every verses that they gave subscription, the one was just going, oh, I cannot believe it. Oh, I cannot believe it. Oh, you guys. Oh, you guys. Oh, you are so versus to GoatVsFish. Oh, you guys. No, stop it. Oh, stop giving the bits to GoatVsFish. Oh, stop it. Oh, no, it's too much for GoatVsFish. It's too much for GoatVsFish. It is never enough for GoatVsFish. There is never enough verses for GoatVsFish. There is never enough verses for GoatVsFish. And if there is enough verses, then we are satisfaction with enough verses. But then we have more verses, and then we bring you more GoatVsFish. We always bring you more GoatVsFish. We have a verses, and we say more verses. We say more verses. We say more verses of goat and fish, and then every now and a verses we have a unity of goatfish. But it is mostly just verses. It's mostly just verses with GoatVsFish, because everything is GoatVsFish. And the mysterious subscription, a mysterious subscription gifted from Julia Mr. Humdinger, who now has wants of GoatVsFish. What is it now? GoatVsFish has now one subscription. GoatVsFish FenceBot, you are really sitting on the fence, aren't you? Julia Mr. Humdinger. We do not know if it is gifted to, if it is gifted from. We do not know what is this versus FenceBot. Well, can you explain this versus? Action, mysterious versus Julian Mr. Humdinger, celebration, one subscription, one more GoatVsFish. FenceBot, you learn your verses, FenceBot. Learn your verses. We are trying to get this FenceBot to be more GoatVsFish and GoatVsFish. Get that fence the fuck out of GoatVsFish. GoatVsFish versus bird versus bear. How about just GoatVsFish? How about just GoatVsFish? Bird versus bear. Bird versus bear. Try to commendation the capital of GoatVsFish. No, false verses. We remain GoatVsFish. We remain GoatVsFish. But it is soon. Soon we are going. Soon we must be going to forgotten virtue. Soon we must be going to forgotten virtue. But we have verses. We have verses. We have RabidManateez the fish. What is the plan for the fence? Julie, Mr. Humdinger, what is the plan for the fence? A plan for the fence? But wait, Rain Felicia, we need to... Never enough verses. More goat. More fish. All true verses. Lord Kubo says this fish is squid. This stupid has a fishy look, but a berry origin. Lord Kubo. You say you're a fish, yes? Are you a fish? How can you say that if you said the squid is a fish, that would be one verses, because then you would be a fish. But you are saying the fish is a squid? GoatVsFish? Mind your verses, you are sounding a bit fancy fish. You are sounding a bit fancy fish. Well, we do not know quite what happened here, but celebration to whoever gifted the verses. Thank you for the gift of GoatVsFish. It is the verses that keeps on gifting. It is the verses that keeps on gifting. GoatVsFish. Celebration. Rain Felicia made a declaration. Here it is. This is Lord Kubo again with the fence verses. This fish has a versus this squid fishy squid. But then the emoji of fish. Lord Kubo, are you goat or fish? Are you goat or are you fish? GoatVsFish. And it is a fish! It is Rain Felicia the fish! Celebration for fish! We want to celebrate Rain Felicia the fish. Rain Felicia the fish. Rain Felicia the fish. And Mike say the fish. Celebration for fish. And with that verses, it is now 7 fish. It is now 7 fish. 6 goat. And we have a raiding verses. We have a verses of the raid for an extra verses, but we also have up that is goat. We have up goat. We have up goat. GoatVsFish. So it looks like it is slightly more fish, just one more fish than goat, just one more fish than goat, but 100 bits for the goat. And we could come up with some verses for the gifted subscription. That could be a verses itself, but for now, it will just be GoatVsFish. It will just be GoatVsFish. And let us see if Lord Kubo, very sus, very sus, very verses. But Lord Kubo with the fish. After all those verses, it is Lord Kubo with the fish, and we love the fish. We love the fish. Here's chunkfish. Oh, chunkfish, the barely visible chunkfish. Let us see chunkfish. Let us see chunkfish. We need to look at that chunkiness. GoatVsFish. Let us look at that chunkiness, yes. Look at the chunkfish. Ooh, the chunky chunkfish. Celebration for chunkfish. Chunk. Chunkfish. Yes, just Itchy, you are a goat, you are a goat. Celebration for the itchy goat. You are an itchy goat, and we welcome you, itchy goat, to Goat vs. Fish. We welcome you to itchy goat, itchy A, itchy goat, itchy A. It is Goat vs. Fish, it is Goat vs. Fish. Ooh, you are a snitch, tell us. It is an itchy, snitchy goat. Do you have a snitch? Are you going to snitch on fish? Are you going to snitch on fish? What have you seen? What have you seen of the fish? What have you seen of the fish? Have you seen a versus? RabidManateez, we found a goat stream to versus today. You found a goat stream. Oh, Goat vs. Fish. What goat stream have you versus? What goat stream have you versus? Nerdy goose, nerdy goose, nerdy goose. Goat versus squid. No, goat versus fish. We do not need to propose these false verses to Goat versus Fish. This is a false proposition. This is a false proposition. Unless the squid is a fish, and the squid must be a fish, because if the squid is versus the goat, then the goat is versus the fish. The squid must be a fish. If goat versus squid is a true versus, then it is Goat versus Fish. Then it is Goat versus Fish. It is Goat versus Fish. Ryan Walterson, celebration for lateness. The late Ryan Walterson. The late Ryan Walterson. It is the late Ryan Walterson. Welcome to Goat vs. Fish. Ryan Walterson, are you goat or fish? Do you be goat? Do you be fish? Ryan Walterson, do you be goat or do you be fish? This verse is the goat chick. The goat chick is the name. Oh, the goat chick. Ooh, aren't you just a cute little goat chick? A cute little goat chick. I am feeling ballistic. Ready, aim, versus. Incoming, take versus. Ballistic goat. It was a ballistic goat. It was fired at the fish. The ballistic goat was fired at the fish. Goat versus Fish. And suddenly, conflagration. The ballistic goat was fired at the fish. Ballistic goat fired at fish. Wow. It was a conflagration with Goat versus Fish. As soon as the ballistic goat came into the verses. Celebration for goat. Celebration for Ryan Walterson the goat. Goat versus Fish. Thank you for being goat. The verses are evening up now. It is even verses now. Apart from the bits, it is even verses between goat and fish. It is still anyone's verses. It is just the beginning of Goat versus Fish Thursday. It is another gift of verses. It is Harry Bolsick with the gifted verses to Ryan Walterson. A verses for Harry Bolsick. Goat versus Fish. Harry Bolsick, you have given extra verses. You have given so many gifted verses this verses that we will gift you a verses for the goat. We will gift you a verses. This is a special verses. Of gifted verses. One verses, bonus verses for Harry Bolsick, the goat. For gifting the verses to Goat versus Fish. You get bonus verses in this verses. and that means goat, advantage goat. Celebration. Now we have not seen Forgotten Virtue. In the verses, but we suspect celebration for goat. And a thank you from goat, to goat. Celebration. The goat thanked the goat. Thank you, goat. Thank you, goat. It is the two goat. They versus the fish. Goat versus Fish. But let us see now. And Chris Ayers, welcome to Goat vs. Fish. Higher level with the fish. Celebration. And a message for Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish. Celebration. Goat vs. Fish. Okay, Goat vs. Fish. We welcome you to Goat vs. Fish. So did Goat fence the fish's wife or something? What's the story? You're new here. Well, Chris Ayers. Perhaps that happened. And the goat said to the fish, and the goat said to the fish, and the fish said to the goat, Did you fence my fishwife? Did you fence my fishwife, goat? Maybe we did, maybe we did. There are so many verses of goat versus fish. Perhaps that is how it begun for you. Perhaps that is how it begun for you. But the question is, Chris Ayers, are you a goat, Chris Ayers? Are you a goat or a fish? Are you a goat or are you fish? Higher level with the fish, higher level with the fish, higher level. You declared fish just a verses ago, did you not? Higher level, goat versus fish. We saw a higher level fish. We saw Fern the fish. We saw Fern 6728. Fern 6728 the fish. Fern 6728 the fish. Welcome to fish. Welcome to fish. Celebration. Welcome to fish. Fern 6728 the great. Make some noise for Fern 6728 the fish. Make some noise for the fish. Make some noise for the fernicle fish. Goat versus fish. Did the goat fence the fishwife? Maybe it was a versus. We suspect it has happened. We suspect that perhaps the reverse has happened as well. Goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. Is waifu vasu husbando. Is it goat fish? Is it goat versus fish? And it is higher level with the fish. It is higher level with the fish. Celebration for the higher level fish. Make some noise for the higher level fish. You can follow the higher level. You can follow everyone here. You can just follow each other. Just if you are here and you're with goat versus fish, follow one another. Follow one another. It is a celebration. Gish baby? Well, why not? But you know, baby. Hey baby, 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 baby. My baby could be a baby goat or a baby fish. It is a baby, 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 baby. Choose goat or choose fish. It is up for every baby to choose goat or fish for itself. They may cry and say, I do not understand goat versus fish, or they may smile and laugh at goat versus fish, but every baby can choose goat or fish. Goatfish babies, they make your verse come true. I experienced a racist verbal assault from a goat. Some I'm down with goat. Oh no, that is a false verses. We do not like that verses. Really, why, what is, we do not, the race is just between goat and fish. The race is just between goat and fish. The race is just between goat and fish. Running faster, running faster. No, we do not want to hear such a verses, Tiger GD. But we do want to know if you are goat or fish. You experienced a racist verbal assault from a goat? No, we do not like this. We do not like this verses at all. No, but are you goat or are you fish? Some I'm down with goat. Some I'm down with goat. We do not quite understand the verses, but it seems that you are saying you are down with goat. Or are you saying down with goat? We do not understand if you are goat or fish. Tell us if you are goat or fish in nice plain verses. No, I mean I'm down with fish. You're down with fish. Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? Are you goat or are you fish? If you say you are down with fish, but up was goat and down was fish this versus, down was fish this versus, we are going to say Tiger GD is fish. We are going to say Tiger GD with fish. It is correction. It says it is down with fish, and in the parlance of your verses, that means you are down with fish, and it is celebration for fish. And it is celebration for fish. Goat versus fish. Fish fam, only 1 or 2 streams away from affiliation. Go follow RabidManateez. Go follow RabidManateez. Make a verses. But soon, I need caffeine so I can work and drink coffee like fish. Celebration. Edward Anderson, just visiting during work. Are you goat or fish? Edward Anderson. And now, this is what you must know. This is what you must know. This is what you must know from Goat versus Fish. That this verses, later on in the verses of Goat versus Fish Thursday, we will be having a verses because we found a new goat and a new fish, and we are going to take this goat versus this fish. Bearded goat versus cheesy crunchy fish. Goat versus fish. Fish versus goat. We are going to have a versus between this goat and this fish later on in the verses of Goat versus Fish. Thank you for joining Goat versus Fish Thursdays, but Goat versus Fish Thursdays, still fish, celebration, tiger fish, cheesy fish for the win. Mike Say declaring it is going to be a cheesy fish versus discuss fish, oh, Goat versus Fish. You cannot even see Goat versus Fish. You can just see goat. You can just see goat. We celebrate the goat. We celebrate the goat. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Welcome to Goat versus Fish. Welcome to Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish. Goat versus Fish is wherever you are. And Mukulmira is goat. Mukulmira is goat. Celebration for goat. Celebration for goat. We're going to sing one final celebration of Goat versus Fish. Edward Anderson, still a fish. Fish are leading the verses. There's 100 bits for Goat. There is no bits for Fish. Fish are leading the verses with more fish than Goat. But it is still anyone's verses. It is still anyone's verses. And it is a gift of verses. Nerdy Goose Whitey, the mighty fish queen, the mighty fish queen. Nerdy Goose, celebration for Fish. Nerdy Goose, you have been added to the verses. And you are a mighty queen. You are a mighty queen to Goat versus Fish. You are a mighty fish queen to Goat versus Fish. It's a killer queen fish. And Harry Bolsick with another gifted verses to Tiger GD. Welcome to Goat vs. Fish from Harry Bolsick celebration. We wonder if you have sent any verses. Goat versus Fish, the way of Goat versus Fish celebration. Welcome to Goat vs. Fish. Celebration for Goat from Muklamira. Celebration for Goat. Goat versus Fish. Goat vs. Fish is now live on the Twitch. Justice for fish. Justice for fish. Justice for fish. Goat versus Fish delivers the justice. Some say that Goat versus Fish is straight up busted. Is there a goat or fish for which you have lusted? If you have not already trusted, Goat versus Fish. Trust Goat versus Fish. Trust Goat versus Fish. Trust Goat versus Fish. It's Goat versus Fish Thursdays with Goat versus Fish. Julian, Mr. Humdinger, and forgotten virtue. Thank you for your presence to Goat vs. Fish. Thank you for your presence to Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish wishes we could stay with you. Wishes we could stay with you forever in the verses. Forever in the verses. Goat vs. Fish Thursdays. That is true. We thank you. We thank you. We thank you for following Goat vs. Fish. Ariana, thank you for following Goat vs. Fish. Thank you for following Goat vs. Fish. And it is Goat vs. Fish Thursdays. Yes, follow Forgotten Virtue and me. Yes, Big Fish Pimp. Follow Forgotten Virtue and Julie Mr. Humdinger with a powerful goat. Revolt against the goat. Revolt against the goat. Justice for fish. Justice for fish. Justice for fish. Goat versus Fish. It is usually, do you wear a mask, Goat versus Fish? Do you wear a mask, Goat versus Fish? Why, Goat versus Fish? Why does Goat versus Fish wear a mask when Goat versus Fish wears the mask of Goat versus Fish? It is the mask of Goat versus Fish. Celebration for the mask of Goat versus Fish. You can find these things and more at goatvsfish.com/store. But now we raid. We raid Forgotten Virtue. It is part of Goat vs. Fish Thursday, and we need to give it the verses. Forgotten Virtue. And it is 100 bits. Goat vs. Fish. We are going to begin the raid. But as we are waiting for the counting down to the raid, it is Inventive Harvest with 100 bits. Celebration for Inventive Harvest with 100 bits for the goat. 100 bits for the goat. That is 200 bits now. That is 200 bits. Celebration. Praise Goat vs. Fish. Praise be Goat vs. Fish. Praise be Goat vs. Fish. From Everybody Loves Magical Goat, Inventive Harvest, inventing the verses. We shall see you in the continuing verses of Goat vs. Fish. Show your celebration to Forgotten Virtue. Show your celebration to Julia Mr. Humdinger. Goat vs. Fish will return at the latest verses. We may return for a little verses, but Goat vs. Fish will return. Goat vs. Fish will return. Oh, Goat vs. Fish, hype train, Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish. We are about to begin the raid, but then you begin the hype train for Goat vs. Fish. Read right with 201 bits, for fish. Goat vs. Fish. Wow. Well, if you really want there to be training for Goat vs. Fish, we can train for Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish. We can do a bit of training for Goat vs. Fish. Goat vs. Fish. Training. Hype train for Goat vs. Fish. All aboard for Goat vs. Fish. The training continues. The training continues. We train Goat vs. Fish. We train Goat vs. Fish. Goat versus fish, 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 goat versus fish. Goat versus fish. The raid has begun. The raid has begun. It was a raid, it was a hype train raid for Forgotten Virtue, it was a hype train raid for Forgotten Virtue, celebration, celebration, Forgotten Virtue. Enjoy the verses, and we will see you on the Book of Faces and the YouTube on the next verses of Goat vs. Fish Thursday of Goat vs. Fish, Goat vs. Fish.